Coming up, host, commentator, film critic, and sports fanatic Ben Mankiewicz joins Illeana in just a minute.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
And now, it's the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast, starring Illeana Douglas. Eavesdrop with Illeana as she interviews Hollywood's most prominent players about filmmaking, acting, and what really happens on the set of your favorite flicks and TV shows.
Hello, I'm Illeana Douglas. Welcome to the I Blame Dennis Hopper podcast. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Tamara Berg.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Illeana.
Here we are, mid-January. The world has not ended. Almost. We're this close.
Really super close.
Super.
The clock moved 30 seconds closer to midnight.
Oh, yes.
Did it?
Yes.
In our dystopian. Well, we have Michael York coming up pretty soon, in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Going to talk to Logan's Run. You know, we're here.
Gosh.
Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, the series of dystopian movies and films and everything. Anyway, it's so excited to be here. We're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. I always believe in honesty.
Yes, I do too.
Coming from a comedy background. Our good friend Ben Mankiewicz is a little, he's caught in a little bit of some traffic, so he's a little late. So
What? There's traffic here?
I know, here in LA, as depicted in the film La La Land, which we're also going to get to.
Yes, we are.
But so so we're going to be chatting a little bit more, which is always fun. Mm-hmm. And so let's hit it.
We got some things to talk about, lady.
Yes, there are many things. Starting with incredibly sad, as if 2016 has bled into 2017 with the worst. You know, again now Mary Tyler Moore has passed away, and it's just so much of an icon. And you know, some people pass away, and it's incredibly sad. Like Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher, just their body of work. Mary Tyler Moore, not only it wasn't her incredible body of work, but what she stood for. I mean, she really was a role model and an icon
At a time when that was just not available for women and girls.
And I think that without somebody like Mary Tyler Moore, again, you know, Oprah Winfrey has spoken, of course, about how much, you know, she believed, and that's what I write about in the book. I mean, Oprah Winfrey wanted to get a job in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Because Mary Tyler Moore worked
there. That's
and
right.
It made it seem like a job that you could do, but you could also, you know, dress nice and have friends and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there'd be probably Tina Fey, you know, so many, when you think of the people that have followed in her footsteps.
Katie Couric was talking about it too recently, about how as a little girl, you know, the part of it that was really specific to me was that she was an independent woman,
right?
You know, playing this character, but she was, you know, there were friends around and there were people around, but she wasn't, you know, just a wife and or a girlfriend the way so many women had been portrayed up to that point.
And she was the center of the show, but she was funny and she was in on the joke. And I have so many favorite episodes. I don't know if you remember the episode where she's going to win an award and her hair, everything goes wrong and she's sick and her hair is a mess. That one's
right
amazing.
out of your life.
Yes, that's
dress.
Oh, right, with the dress.
That sounds like something. But you know, you could really relate to that. There was another one where a friend made this hideous dress that was like way too revealing. There was that dress. One of my favorite, I posted last night on Facebook. I mean, and I'm not even getting to the most famous ones.
Right,
These are just the ones that I love.
That appeal to you.
When Mary, who's famous for having horrible dinner parties, and everybody makes fun of them, convinces Sue Ann to make her veal Prince Orloff, and she only has 6 servings. And Lou, her boss, comes over and takes half of the veal Prince Orloff and then has to put it back. And then meanwhile, Rhoda is the only appearance of Henry Winkler. He has just gotten fired at the department store, and she brings him. And again, Mary says, I don't have enough portions. And she says, it's okay. He could sit at the little table. I promise everyone, go Google Mary Tyler Moore, veal Prince Orloff. It is just an incredible comic episode because the situation is hysterical. And Ted Knight, again, because she only has these 6 seats, Ted is not invited, and everyone else in the office is. And so Ted Knight also has to figure out a way to go there. So you have this just incredible situation. And then the other thing I was going to say, which has been noted on the news, and we talked about this in Trailblazing Women, is that Mary Tyler Moore's show employed a lot of female writers and also female directors, and that was pretty kind of unheard of at the time. And the most famous episode, like sort of considered the top 5 of all comedy episodes, is Chuckles the Clown, which was directed by a woman, and so, an amazing legacy. Also, her work in Ordinary People, I think, is extraordinary. That's one of those movies, we talk about movies that make you cry. Boy, her performance in a scene where she's on the golf course when her son has died, and she's just trying to have a good time, and she yells at the other family, like, you try to relax when you're, when she talks about this tragedy. I just thought was unbelievable. Just the depth to go from being a light comedian, to that, I think is pretty incredible.
Agreed. It's a great loss. And she, like so many of these women who really created possibilities for the people who were watching them, Florence Henderson and Debbie Reynolds and things like that. It's another one of those ones that you really kind of feel in your heart because there was such a connection for all of us who watched her. And, with reruns and that sort of thing, so many people have connections to it. So it's a big loss.
It also spawned, again, when speaking of women, it spawned, it seems unheard of today that it spawned, Phyllis and Rhoda.
Right.
So all these other great shows where women were at the forefront. I also thought there was something very touching just about this epitaph, if you will, of this idea of like she turned the world on with a smile, which doesn't make you cringe, but actually really touches you. Because you think, my goodness, if that's quite a legacy. I think that's very touching. And in her own personal life, it doesn't seem like she found happiness until very late in life, and kind of persevered in that way. But was close friends with Betty White, and just quite a legacy. And I was, as I said last night, while other important television shows are premiering, I was watching episode after episode of Mary Tyler Moore. Another one that is very funny, again, because she's so famous for giving these horrible parties, is she finally thinks she has it, and Johnny Carson is going to come to her party, and there's a blackout in the building. And they do, and I watched it, and I hadn't seen it, for many years since I was a kid. And you can't believe the daring of a national sitcom to spend literally half the episode in pitch black. In pitch black, and just hear the voices and you hear, and Johnny Carson comes in, and the things that are occurring while he's there, and unbelievable. It's an unbelievable show. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And so that's going on. May she rest in peace.
Yes.
And of course, the other big news is
Oscar nominations came out.
The Academy Awards. I'm not on here.
What?
I'm shocked. Now, here's what's funny.
Hang on, maybe there's a page 3.
Well, as people know, or I'm going to say it for the first time, the regular watchers of the show, I am a member of the Academy.
Yes,
I take it very seriously, and I try to watch as many movies out in the theater as possible, which I really enjoy, and then some of them, of course, I watch at home. And they send you a booklet of literally every film that came out. And every year I'm usually in a film that I could vote for myself. But I often wonder, like, would I get kicked out? It's like, Illeana, you got one vote, and you were it. So, no, you're not going to get a nomination. You're not going to beat out Viola Davis, okay? It's not going to happen.
Not this year, anyway.
Not this year. But that for me would be the pinnacle. My grandfather, of course, won 2 Academy Awards.
Yes, he did.
2. And I've never been to the Academy Awards because I vow that I will not go until I'm nominated. So that's mine.
Oh, all right. We need to get on that.
Cut
then.
to me being a valet. Like, yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Costner. We worked together many years ago.
Well, you know,
Remember me?
one of my very close friends actually manages the valets, so I can get you that job.
Oh, that'd be like for me one of the
How's
top
that?
3 worst jobs. With
It is a terrible job. I've
Oh.
heard many stories about it.
I can't even imagine. It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, many of them just involving heat.
All right, so let's go through these films.
Okay.
Did the awards line up with your picks?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes, they did. Here's my one issue with the Academy is I do not see I, Daniel Blake on here. I, Daniel Blake was my second favorite film of the
Really?
year.
I'm writing it down.
So I think I know a thing or two about films. La La Land was my favorite film of the year. I, Daniel Blake by Ken Loach, a very noted British filmmaker. Has been making movies since the 60s. He's 80 years old and he made this film, and I happen to think it's incredible. It won the Palme d'Or, which is the grand prize at Cannes. Not an easy feat. So it's a pretty good film.
What's it about?
It's about a man, a guy who is a carpenter who has a heart attack and loses his health insurance and therefore gets put into this system of trying to look for work, can't look for work because of his health condition. And in the course of that, he meets a young woman who's also been thrown into this healthcare system, has 2 kids, literally can't afford enough money for food, and they kind of befriend each other and help each other. And it's incredibly touching. And this performance by the lead actor is 59 years old. He'd never been in a film before. He was a stand-up comedian. So again, for those people out there that think, you know, you can't make it, you can make it. Anything is possible. But the relationship between this man and the woman, which is not it's not a romantic situation. It's just about friends. And to me, what it spoke about is our future and the way things are here in America and getting very dark.
Yeah.
Is that all we really have is each other. We're not going to have the bureaucracy and getting caught in the system just kind of chews you up and spits you out. And I think it's an incredibly important film with a masterful performance from both people. I was blown away by it, but I did not, and I went out and sought the movie. I did not get it, because we get the studios send. Now remember, I want to tell everyone, screeners do not come from the Academy; they come from studios.
Right.
So the Academy is no, horse in the race, so to speak. But
That's pretty good.
but anyway, so Ben is here. How exciting!
Oh,
So
fantastic.
he can join in on our conversation.
Why don't you introduce him?
I'm going to introduce Ben Mankiewicz, who is, of course, the host of Turner Classic Films. He's a critic, of course, there for What the Flick, and he probably drives 80 miles an hour, and he's here. Look at this. Ben, have a seat and put your headphones on. You're the best.
Sorry.
No. Don't worry about it. I'm just excited you're here. We went ahead and we started to talk without you anyway. We were talking about the Oscars. I don't know if you need the Oscar list.
Sure, I'll take it.
and
But I did talk about it this morning on my little show, What the Flick, my review show, and
Hey.
where I almost brought you up, and then it suddenly occurred to me that maybe it wasn't a story that I'm allowed to tell publicly, and then this is all in my head while I'm talking. And then I was like, no, I think it was in the book.
Yes.
Because my friend Alonzo Duralde, who was a critic for The Wrap and a really smart, good guy, he said, we never know who finished 6th.
Oh.
And I said, and then I was like, and I was about to say, no, well, one year we know who finished 6th. And then I thought, but maybe they didn't, maybe that's unofficial and you're not allowed to say it out loud.
Well, maybe you aren't, but I'm
You
going to
already
brag.
have, right.
So I mean, coming in second is not so bad.
And coming in sixth for Best Supporting Actress, that means and the reason they told you because it was so close.
It was like something
like a vote.
Because you didn't get a chance to vote for yourself that year.
No,
Damn it.
incidentally, no. It was something like 4 votes. It was something crazy.
Really, really close. In a category that everyone votes for.
Yeah.
Right.
And those were the days. I'm going to take a wild guess. I think this was 1994 to die for, 93 or 94.
That sounds
but
right.
you didn't I didn't even know. I mean, I was like living in New York. I didn't know that you could campaign. And we had this discussion, or maybe I did, with Angie Dickinson in Dressed to Kill. She said, you didn't campaign.
No, that's all fairly new.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting that came up today, and but also, let's just talk a little bit briefly about the heroics of being, well, first of all, the anti-heroics of you telling me a time and me totally reversing it. You switching the time, and I just did it exactly the opposite.
Oh.
And I was so sure when you called and was like, hey, are you here? And I was like, no, you moved me to 2:30. You silly Illeana. And then I looked at the text and I was like, oh, man. But in a dog park.
Yes.
In Santa Monica, California.
Wow.
By the ocean,
Look
like
at
at
you.
6th Street.
Wow.
That's where I was.
Then you went,
Had to gather the dogs, daughter, wife, everybody
what?
into a car
To be here?
and manage somehow to get her with the.
You're the best.
Amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
it'll be fun. We're going to run into our pal Peter Bogdanovich in a little bit. So we always like to think of this as cocktail hour anyway. Well, with PG tips, but
Yeah. There might be cocktails one
different
day.
kind of a cocktail hour. But where guests sort of run into each other,
Yeah, that's
People-
good. That's
I
good.
always like that.
I always like.
It's like one of my singing parties.
I have. Peter's a guest at the festival
I
this year,
know.
the TCM Classic Film Festival, and I have already suggested one of the things we should do with him, and I will, and maybe you could, or if I'm
Yes.
still here, make that argument to him that I want him to do an hour of like up close with Orson Welles, Howard Hawks, and John Ford through Peter Bogdanovich. But that's how it should That's how it should be pitched, because who else? Nobody else.
It's the Bible.
He speaks like and then he kind of imitates them. Like he goes into a little bit of a vernacular. And I just think that would be incredibly cool to just have him do essentially 20 minutes on each guy or whatever, 15, and take some questions. I think it'd be great. And he'd love to, I'm sure. My hunch is he'd love to.
Do you listen to, and we're going to, do you listen to his commentaries on
I have,
films?
yeah.
Oh, they're the best. They're his commentary on Citizen Kane is actually...
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I learned so much from a movie, like he was talking about Clash by Night, and apparently he doesn't study either. He just goes in.
He just goes in and gives his impressions. Yeah, he's a smart guy. Of all the TCM interviews I've done, I was most intimidated
Really?
by 2 people.
Me, number one.
Three.
Sure.
Three.
Yeah.
Obviously, Illeana Douglas, because she's
Super
intimidating.
intimidating.
So
Right.
scary.
You ask a dumb question, she'll call you on it right then, make you feel
And
a fool.
slap you.
That's right.
in my experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
violent. That's right. 3 people actually stood out. All men. Interesting. I don't know what that says about me.
Yeah.
But 1, Peter Bogdanovich.
Okay.
2, obviously Jerry Lewis. Everyone should be nervous before talking to Jerry.
He's Jerry. He's my Jerry. He's my boyfriend.
And
so
3,
I'm not scared of him.
Max von Sydow.
Oh, I'm with you on Max von Sydow. I remember our mutual friend who works there, Darcy Hetrich, is VP of Talent, and she goes to me, "Do you want to meet Max von Sydow?" And I said, "Oh, of course." And I have something in common because I'm just about to do a show in Sweden, you know.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I went back and I said hello, and I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm such a fan. I'm about to do a show in Sweden. He goes, I haven't lived in Sweden in many years. Like dead silence, and I was like, okay, well, thank you. Really great to meet you. Thanks for cutting my legs off.
But all of them
Yeah.
were great. They were all instantly. Peter had a cold. I met him in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
We did a great event that night before. It must have been the Last Picture Show. But he was terrific. And instantly, I sat down. I was like, I'm a little bit nervous. And he was like, oh my, that's crazy. Why would you be nervous? And then He was chatty, and he had a wonderful conversation on the phone because he'd been sick. It changed forever how I think about Sybil Shepherd, because she was calling to check on him.
Aw.
You know, they hadn't been together in 25 years.
Right.
But they still had a
connection.
They had a connection, and they were concerned for each other, and she was worried about him traveling with a cold, and I thought that was very sweet.
It's so interesting when you do interviews, like when I've been starting to do interviews at TCM, I feel like I'm always, you have the questions that are in the pocket, kind of, that if you hopefully can get to if they feel comfortable enough. Or are you building, what's your research like as you go into it? I sort of build a beginning, middle, and end, but I think that's because I'm an actor.
I do a...
Finish big,
Right. I don't think of it that way. I do a tremendous amount of research. I suppose that it is disorganized research. I am very scared of losing them. Losing, where they just sort of check out, especially if it's an hour and you lose them like at minute 27, and how hard it is to get that back. I've had that happen once, and it was bad in the beginning. It was with Alexander Payne. He's the guy I lost, but George Clooney was there, and it was saved because George Clooney was there, and he sensed it, and he just got charming. And so that sort of put everybody at ease. But I do a ton of research and then write down sort of all these sort of points that I want to make, or want to get them to make.
Right.
And that guy's going to regret that decision. Because I just left some gum on the table, and he kindly scooped it up, but the gum was not well kept by the wrapper. He's going to get some gum on his hand. So I just have these points I want to make, and then I sort of feel it out of how it should go. I don't even really write down questions. I write down bullet points that I want to hit, and then I sort of turn them into questions. Because I've just gotten to the point where the best thing I can ask, there's usually a question at the beginning, and I usually know what that is, how I'll start it off with.
Right.
But then to me, by far, the best questions are, really? Why? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh. Anything to get them to say more.
Right, the follow-up.
Yeah, but not even a complicated follow-up. Just a, really? Like, act amazed. I usually am, right? It's not as if I'm faking it. Like, I didn't know that. Wow. And then they'll say something else. They'll just talk.
Yeah.
And then you just get a feeling. Then you're like, get into the finish zone. You're like, okay, anytime in the next 7 minutes, I can end this.
Right.
And so if we get a moment that's going to leave people feeling vibrant and connected, then take it. So sometimes the tough part will be like, I want to get to this. This is it. Or I'll think, I can say something funny about this. This is going to be great. And then they'll hit a moment, and I'll think, I've got to let it go. I've got to let that thing go. I got to say, ladies and gentlemen, Illeana Douglas, because I know that's when they'll sort of be most thunderous.
Well, I always admire you because you do the jokes, and I don't, and I'm a joker, but I feel like I always want to kind of wait it out unless I know the person well, like if it's like Richard Dreyfuss or
the problem is that the humor has to be self-deprecating. Like, it has to be how big an idiot I am, otherwise it's they're not there to see me
what were you thinking?
Do a bit, right? But the research enables me to be funny, because if I don't feel confident that if they ask, oh my God, I can't remember who directed that movie, and then I can go, George Seaton. Right. And if I know that I can say that, even though 2 days later I really might not be able to say that.
Yes.
I can say it right then in that moment. Then it gives me the confidence to try and be funny, because if it fails, I got stuff to fall back on.
There's nothing worse than like not getting the actor right.
And it's happened. Sometimes they'll call out, and I just go, I go, I don't know, but there's like 1,000 people here who have the answer. And sure enough, somebody, George Seaton!
Which brings me to my other terrifying, the high wire act is like the first question in a Q&A. Like, what is it about the first question?
Oh, you mean with the crowd
your eyes.
Oh,
if you had like a kind of X-ray vision of like I know they're going to be like, Jerry, in 1946.
That's the danger. Is that if they say a year, you're effed.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, totally.
And I stood outside, and I'm like, we're losing them.
Well, the best moment ever in a Q&A I had came from one of those moments. Was and you mentioned her, was with Angie Dickinson, and we were in Austin at whatever that giant, great Alamo, whatever that theater's called.
Yes.
In Austin. And packed, standing in the back, 1,000 people to see Angie before the John Wayne Western, Rio Grande, right?
Rio Bravo.
Rio Grande. Rio Grande's the river. Rio Bravo to see Rio Bravo with Ricky Nelson and with Dean Martin, and Rio Grande, so great. And so we go. It's been a great conversation. She's sexy and funny, and I'm like into her.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking if she wants to get a drink, we're gonna have to go get a drink. Like I'm just Angie Dickinson. She's so.
Of course.
And as you know, it's happened to you too, and she's become a friend. And so we go to the questions, and a guy comes up, and he looks like, and I'm going to sound like I'm being a jerk, but he looked like the comic book guy on The Simpsons. Like his T-shirt didn't fit, and he didn't look like he showered much, and he was excited to see Angie Dickinson, and he starts talking about when he was 12 years old, he would watch Policewoman, and he would watch it, alone at dark, and it would be at night, and he would always have a poster of her, and when the lights went out, he would start thinking about Angie Dickinson. Okay? This is after he has come up to the stage with something he wants her to sign. So it's already like too personal, and he's right there, and the crowd is awkward, and we've had this great conversation, and he says, when it's at night, I'd go to, the lights would go out, and then I'd start thinking about Angie Dickinson, right? And I'm like, okay, that's great. Thanks, I think. And Angie scoots her chair up, so it makes a noise, right, which is key. She puts her hand out to tell me to shut up, right? She's like, and then she goes, go on. It was great. Crowd loved it. Everybody loved it. It was fantastic. And she made that moment. She saved that moment.
Yeah, there's nothing like that great. My favorite moment. Well, my first favorite moment interviewing was when I got to interview Richard Roundtree, and they told me, and I did my research. He hasn't been in a lot of movies, and they said, oh, there's just one thing he doesn't want to talk about, Shaft.
I was going to say, you can talk about anything you want, except Shaft.
And the movie was Earthquake that we were presenting, and I was, it was kind of like, okay.
I can eliminate questions 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Right?
It was like, so it was like, Earthquake, and I started with the director, Mark Robeson. He goes, no, I don't remember him. I was like, okay, I'm down to 2 more. And I said, it was a fantastic cast in Earthquake. And he was like, I don't really remember who was in Earthquake. And I started to tell him, I said, well,
Charlton Heston, Ava Gardner, right?
Yeah.
It's a serious cast, right?
And he goes, I didn't work with Charlton Heston. And I said, I think you did. Weren't you in the bar
There's
when
a scene together?
Walks in, and he disputed that. He goes, no, I never. And then I said, George Kennedy, do you remember? I said, he's such
played the cop, right?
George Kennedy goes, no, I didn't. And then he just stared at me. And then I said, there's a big earthquake in the movie. Do you remember that, Richard? And that got a huge laugh. We were out at the pool at the Roosevelt, and then it broke the ice.
But how big a difference is that too outside? Like the acoustics aren't good, so it's impersonal. So the ability to connect meaningfully, you're never going to have a great Q&A outdoors. Ever. You can have a good one, but it's never going to be intensely intimate because they're not going to open up because because it lacks the intimacy. Right? It just feels like a show. As opposed to a conversation. That's what I think. It's like, and then somebody will start hamming it up. Adam West was great with Lee Merriweather for me at the pool, but every question they answered jokily.
Oh.
Right? It was fine. They were good. They're great. And people, it's Adam West and Lee Merriweather. Who doesn't want to see them? They're thrilled. But there was no moment of, trying to get him to say, yeah, that was I screwed that up. I didn't embrace it, or I didn't go back to it quickly. And all things that he talked about backstage, that he's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
But out there on the stage where you don't feel the immediate connection to the audience. There's a delay in the way that, in a great theater, the acoustics will reverberate off the wall and they'll come back. You just feel like you're enclosed. You're all in this thing together. That goes away outside.
Do you miss the old Grauman's? I do. I don't know how you feel about it, but the old Grauman's Chinese theater, like you see the movie Star is Born and
Right.
she's running up the aisle. It looked like that for years, and now it's stadium seating.
Now it's the TCL.
Something or other.
Yeah, IMAX. Chinese IMAX.
Chinese.
Something.
Great Wall.
Right.
Something.
It's beautiful. They kept a lot of the original stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it does look nice, but it was never that was a beautiful theater and a beautiful theater to see a movie, and it meant something. It's never a good place to have a conversation because it's cavernous.
Yeah.
It's too big.
Oh my God! It feels like the people are,
You can't see anybody. They're too far away. It's again, it lacks the intimacy of even a giant theater like the one that Angie and I had in Austin. But you don't want too many people in that audience just for a conversation. I mean, you can get past it. It's fine, and it might be work, but it's a little harder to connect with the audience in those big theaters.
So it's funny, we skipped usually we start our show. And I always do this. It's, we've already talked about it. It's my favorite question. What was the first movie you saw and who took you to see it?
I think I'm probably wrong because of the year. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm definitely wrong because of the year. But the first movie I remember going to in a theater, because I went with my father and my brother, was the remake of The Champ with John Voight and Ricky Schroeder.
That's a good one. It's a new one.
Yeah, it was not a good one. It's a super manipulative movie. Also, who takes a little kid to see a movie where the boy's dad dies? And he's appropriately crestfallen.
Yes.
But the year, I think The Champ might have been 79.
Yeah,
something like that. And so, I mean, I was 12. I'd seen Star Wars. I mean,
you were sophisticated.
Yeah, so my dad and I went to see Smokey and the Bandit. I saw Smokey and the Bandit as many times as Star Wars 3. I went to see Star Wars the second 2 times because everybody else did. I wasn't that into it. I was like, oh yeah, let's go see Star Wars again. Christ.
Yeah.
I got it.
I know, I wasn't into it.
Yeah, and we're like basically the same age, so the same. And
I was into Jaws though.
I was into Jaws, but I don't think I saw Jaws in a theater.
I saw it in a drive-in.
But I saw it not first run, maybe in a theater.
So weird.
Because we used to go to East Hampton before it was that, or at least I didn't know it was Tony.
Yeah.
It was also fairly empty in August. I guess it's not the case now, but some people used to give us their house, friends of my father's and mother's, and I think I saw I think I saw Jaws there in a theater. Oh, but you know what I saw? It was a good story. I saw An Officer and a Gentleman there. That would have been later.
Racy.
Yeah, totally. And I'm like 14, and the people who gave us their house were named the Rogans, and they had a daughter, Sally Rogan. And Sally Rogan, I think, was my age or a year older. And she was beautiful, right? Her hair was long, it was super curly. And my cousin Nick Davis, who's now a TV director and producer, he was there too. He's 2 years older, so he's like a year older than Sally, and I'm the young kid there. And we go see An Officer Gentleman, and it's really sexy.
Yeah.
Right? And my mom and dad are also there, but they're not sitting near us. Like you got the 3 kids, we're sitting together, and then at the moment, I guess the first time or the second time that they have sex, and Deborah Winger is on top of Richard Gere, and my mom comes up in front of us in the theater. So her back is to the screen. She's standing over us, and she goes loudly, I'm not going to sit here and watch Deborah Winger astride Richard Gere. And I remember thinking, that's the first time I've heard the word astride, but I instantly know what it means. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and watch Deborah Winger astride Richard Gere. Your father and I are going home. Do you want to come with me? Or you can, we were like, Stouse was less than a mile away. It was the summer. We were like, or do you want to walk home afterwards? And I'm like, I'll walk.
Wow.
But I remember thinking, this is I have no chance with Sally Rogan. Like nobody. I'm now the kid who got his mother and my dad like being like, yeah, I guess we're going. I didn't have a problem with it, but I guess we're leaving.
That's so funny, because my parents were the hippies, that would,
Right. You got to see Astride live, probably.
Well, yeah, that's the second book. Oh yeah, we were like, well, the kids. Well, my brothers would. We would always look at the hippies because as wrote in the book, grew up on a commune, so they were always majorly in love with older, women wearing braids and ponchos.
Totally,
that became like their every go-to girlfriend. I always thought was like a replica of one of the real pretty, ruddy-faced kind of hippie girls.
Halter tops and beads and things.
Ponchos. She made pottery. That sort of type. But
it's a good girl to like.
Yeah. So that's the first. And did you talk to your dad about movies? Or your parents, your brothers?
No, I had this family history in movies that it didn't. I mean, it just didn't come to me until much later. It didn't. I mean, I knew it and I was told it, but Herman, my grandfather, wrote Citizen Kane was. No matter what your next guest says, had been dead since 1953, 14 years before I was born, and my dad had gone into politics, and I grew up in D.C. and Joe Mankiewicz was alive, living in Bedford in New York, but I didn't. And I knew Joe, but he'd been. The thing about Joe was he had writer's block and hadn't written a movie in forever.
Right.
Hadn't directed a movie I think since Sleuth.
Mm-hmm.
So it just didn't. It wasn't that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it, but my dad was so famous in Washington politics that that's sort of what I thought was by far most important. So we talk about movies, but not a ton.
Wow. So did you have a thought of going into politics?
Yeah, much. Politics and sports broadcasting. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I'd do. One of those things.
So when did the movie bug?
I mean, in college, I took a course. I know that Tufts didn't have much of a film program, but I took a cinema course from this sort of really cool professor, whose name completely escapes me, and I wrote and I took it pass-fail because junior year I realized you were allowed to take 6 courses pass-fail, and I hadn't taken any, which meant the next 2 years were going to be fantastic because I was not going to take fewer than 6. I mean, I was going to take as many as you were allowed to take pass-fail. So I take this film course pass-fail, but day one, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic because it does what TCM does. It's putting these movies in historical context.
Right.
And I just was into it right away, putting these movies into some usually political context. And then I wrote a paper on the Santa Fe Trail with Ronald Reagan and Errol Flynn. And it was so clearly, and it was about John Brown, but it was 1940, I think, and it was obviously about Hitler. They turned John Brown into Hitler, and they changed history. They had all these guys go into West Point together who didn't go to West Point together, all these sort of famous 19th century generals and officers. And I wrote about that. Like, hey, look what the movies do. They changed it around. I mean, one guy was there 20 years later. It didn't matter. They put them together. They put them in the class, and this guy clearly represents Hitler and the threat we faced in 1940 from Hitler. And I loved it, and I got, I think, the only A+ of my life. Oh. And the comments were he was thrilled with the paper, and I thought, I can't believe I took this course pass-fail. I've just blown a surefire A. But so that made me think, oh, this is fun. I like knowing stuff about movies. I feel now a lack of, the first time I feel a lack of knowledge about movies, and so then it just started to sort of slowly grow from there. But I had to do a tremendous amount of catch-up work when I got the TCM job. I mean, a lot. And I did a lot of stuff in a hurry. So a lot of stuff that I saw then I've already forgotten about. I don't retain a lot of stuff. Like, you know instantly, and there's a whole group of people whose recall on classic movies is fantastic. And I don't have it. I am great about the things I know, and then I just need a reminder.
Right.
Like if we're going to talk about, I'm like, okay, give me 7 minutes, and I'll like, oh, I remember. Oh, right, yeah, okay, go, right.
Yeah.
But 2 days later, I can't have that same conversation again without refreshing myself again.
I'm curious. Do you have a movie? For me, there's always what I always love is like, yes, I'm a movie fanatic, and I've seen so many movies, but there's many like classic films, and I'm like, no, I never saw it. And one of them was, you're going to be shocked because it's like you see it in pieces on television,
right.
and I never saw start to finish Grapes of Wrath.
Oh, I love Grapes of
Which
Wrath.
it was on TCM. In my house, I don't. Most actors I know, it's like, oh, we only have TCM on. We don't watch the news anymore. But
Especially now.
I know, with a candle in front of it, and a picture of Ben, of course. But yeah, I was like, okay, now I understand the movie. Got out of prison, okay, because I hadn't read the book. But do you have movies like that where you're like, no, I never saw it. Like, I can't get through The Good Earth. I'm sorry, I cannot get through that movie.
Oh well, I mean, so are you asking me, are there classic movies that I hate? Or classic movies that I haven't seen?
Well, sort of both. Let's do both.
Well, first of all, again, like I said, there are so many I've seen that if I had to do a Q&A with somebody about, I would simply have to rewatch. Like, I just don't, I got to remember, I don't know enough about it.
Right.
I can't believe the scene recall that people have. Like, it doesn't, but I have it for baseball. So I get it, but I just don't have it. Somebody will ask me a question of a movie I saw a month ago, and they'll say, "But in that moment, that scene with whether it's a modern movie, that scene with Humphrey Bogart, or that scene with Denzel Washington, it just didn't make sense." And I'm like, I don't know what scene you're talking about, and I like this movie, but I don't remember.
That's interesting.
Without giving the year, because the year would do me grave, permanent damage to my credibility. I didn't see Gone with the Wind for a very long time.
Well, that's what I mean. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while before I saw Gone with the Wind, and then I saw it, and I hated it. I didn't sort of dislike it. I actively disliked it. Then reading about it more helped me put it in a context that let me appreciate it more. I still don't like it, though. I still don't like it. I don't see value in it. But I can't, again, I'm able to get past racism and sexism and in a lot of movies, because you have to if you love these movies. There's no way. That's a great thing that TCM does. For whatever reason, that one, I just find it incredibly uncomfortable. And the way we celebrated it and and the Oscars, all of it makes me, whatever. It's an odd movie that we celebrate. But again, it broke through. It was a critical way, and it was what was it, over 4 hours, and in such an unbelievable year for movies.
I saw it on television when I was a kid. They played it over, 2 nights.
Oh, that's how they did it? 2 nights?
Yeah, that's how they did it.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a lot of movies in my childhood I saw on television. I wrote that, the first time I saw Easy Rider was like on TV, and it was completely cut up, and they cut the ending off. So, and the movie was like, okay, they ride off in a motor. What's the big deal?
Right.
Like, it was like fate. Suddenly it was like the credits. I was like, this is the movie that ruined my life. Like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
But so, Gone with the Wind, I remember. I think it was a huge deal that they were going to say "damn."
It was a very big deal. The settlement was that you could say "damn" if and there's a cockamamie rule. It makes no sense. That you could say "damn" as long as it was in a context where it wouldn't offend anyone.
Right. But Butterfly McQueen didn't offend.
They're just making it up. They're just saying, that's just a rule to say we're going to say it here. And no one was prepared to tell Selznick what he couldn't do with that movie at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. That movie has possibly, which I'm always fascinated by movies, has gone a little bit out of fashion. Like when I was starting to watch movies in the 70s, I think that was, again, right up there on top.
The racism in it is aggressive. It's not slight. It's aggressive.
Yeah.
And we're rooting for people who maybe we shouldn't be rooting for. And I don't have any problem not liking Gone with the Wind, but I get it. It's incredibly important, and it was, again, this, really the first modern epic, right?
Right.
And this huge production, and it worked, and people loved it. So it was a tentpole moment for Hollywood. Of what we can accomplish. Look at this. We can think bigger than we've been thinking before.
Right.
We can do grand things. And so, it was incredibly important. It should continue to be seen and discussed. But you can also think that it doesn't hold up like the way Casablanca totally does. The way, to me, Citizen Kane.
Yeah,
totally
Citizen Kane it's fascinating to me because that's a movie that from my early childhood they always said was the best movie ever made, and that seems to be pretty consistent. And again, that's like a question that in this book, Peter literally goes through the shots and every aspect of the film and of what makes it such an important film.
Yeah, and to that end, although my grandfather wrote it, nobody breaks down. You don't break down the screenplay. You break down what Welles did. Like, to me, saying that Herman Mankiewicz wrote it, there is nothing to change that this is Orson Welles' movie, right?
Right.
I mean, left out the breakthrough direction techniques, right? The incredible performance, right? But the force of will to get it made, the cult of personality that enabled him and probably only him to take on Hearst and to get that done. The producing is the toughest part about that movie.
Right.
Not about every movie, but that movie. And so it's Welles' movie. He didn't write the screenplay. I
had that, when I watched it, and so many times, but because we were doing the profile on Trailblazing Women of Dorothy Comingore, I had to watch the movie from her point of view, which I had never done, and then read about how her whole career was completely destroyed by Hearst. I mean, literally things like, set her up to be arrested for prostitution, like things that
Right, the things that Hearst did afterwards essentially prove that everything about the movie was true. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you don't want people to think that about you, don't do things like that to Dorothy Comingore.
Yes, yeah. Well, which leads me, I guess, to the future that we're in. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm very concerned about what kind of movies are going to be made, or is censorship going to become the norm? Is comedy going to be, not allowed because it offends the president?
Yeah, these are all, those are serious questions among the 50 serious questions that we're asking as a country, and what questions the journalists are asking and should be asking. Yeah, I mean, no civilized person thinks it's okay to make fun of Donald Trump's 10-year-old son.
Right.
Right? I don't think. But
I mean, so I shouldn't say looks like Damien in The Omen?
I don't. No, you should not, and you wouldn't.
No, right, I wouldn't say something. Never.
So,
I wouldn't.
But a comedian telling a joke about him is different. That's their job. And it might be in bad taste. And if Katie Rich, the Saturday Night Live writer who tweeted the joke about Barron Trump, I would have said, hey, Katie, no, that's off limits. Don't do that. I'm serious.
Right.
Knock it off. Delete the tweet, apologize, and don't do that again.
Right.
And that's where I would have left it. But, the notion, the indefinite suspension, if it turns into getting fired, like, hey, man, like John McCain made fun of Chelsea. He's not a comedian. Yeah. Like, his job is not to sort of think, it's different. Like, I hold politicians to a different standard than joke writers.
Right.
Joke writers are supposed to make jokes. And I don't think it was I don't think it came from a dark, bad place.
No.
It was just trying to get people to laugh in this sort of difficult time for all those who are opposed to Trump. That said, shouldn't have done it. So it's a worthy debate, and I'm pleased to see that most of the comedy community rallied behind her.
I just feel like it's a little bit of it's a little bit of humorlessness. I mean, I remember when Clinton was his inaugural, there was a big thing because his daughter's hair blocked most of that she got made fun of, or Jimmy Carter's daughter Amy got made. I mean, there's a little bit of, remember the Rudy Giuliani? Remember there was a famous thing when Rudy Giuliani was sworn in as the mayor, and his son was behind him, making a lot of face. So there is a little bit of a tradition. You got to have a little bit of ribbing here, but
and when you're a comedian, when ribbing becomes picking on, that's when you've gone too far. And so I would have just said, hey, on day one, let's not make fun of him, make fun of his wife, make fun of his family, make fun of his dad, his mom, whatever you want.
Right.
Just make fun of the grown-up kids. Have at them, right? But calm down in your reaction. Like, it's not her job is to tell jokes, and she's good at it.
Yeah.
Let her say, "Oops, sorry," and
I agree.
Let's go, move on. Don't cost her job. That's crazy.
Yeah, that did seem a little crazy to me. What about movies like political movies that we've watched over the years, like Manchurian Candidate or Being There, and Are those going to be ruined?
Well, a lot of people, I got a lot of tweets on Inauguration Day. They all thought that we'd programmed a face in the crowd on purpose.
Oh, everybody did.
Right. Now,
people were, they were like, go TCM.
Right. And I think we may have programmed it on purpose. I didn't check with Millie, who tweeted like, hey, this was me and no one else. Right. But I assume she did it on Inauguration Day because she was like, hey, it's a political movie, and we probably had a couple of political movies on Inauguration Day. I don't know, but it did feel like there was a point being made. We also I think we had Atlas Shrugged on Inauguration Day too.
Well, are you going to be playing 1984 with the newest book on the New York Times
bestseller? Yeah, if I can't get a copy. Yeah.
That is really. I remember in 1984 going to see the movie 1984. That was surreal.
I don't know that I must have seen the movie. I'm sure I did, but again, that's a perfect example. Like I don't remember it. It was bad, right?
Very dark.
Dark.
Richard Burton and John Hurt, and so dark that I mean I know the movie.
What year?
1984.
It came out in 84?
Yeah. That was like the whole point. I remember because I would have been in acting school.
I would have been 17. I'm sure I saw it. It has and I certainly haven't seen it since. So
yeah, it's very dark. Well, now of course I want to rewatch it. So I've had a kind of an interest in rewatching political movies.
I'm sure Philip Roth's The Plot Against America. I'm sure they've reprinted. I would bet that's been reprinted also.
Right.
Yeah.
The Parallax View is another one.
I don't like The Parallax View as some other political thrillers in the.
Oh, interesting. How come?
I can't follow it totally. I don't really know what's happening, and I feel like that there's.
It's got Warren Beatty in it, and he's got that hair.
It's got Warren Beatty with serious hair, and there's like a bomb on a plane.
We got to get to him, but those were his really good-looking years. Didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we just had him on, and I spent a couple.
Weren't
hours.
you intimidated by him? I'd be seeing now. He'd be someone I'd love to
I would have, but he and I got intimidated by him during the interview because I said something that I thought was funny, and I don't know that he got it, and he was like, "No, I don't think so." And I was like, "No, I was kidding."
No.
But it was fine. Now but Warren and my dad were very close because they worked together on the McGovern campaign in '72, and then for Gary Hart in 1984 when I was in '84 or late '83, a couple of times my parents were out. The phone rang twice at least, and I'd answer it, and I'd get. Yeah, hello, is Frank there? and I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's doing an unbelievable Warren Beatty. And I'd be like, no, he's out right now. He goes, oh, it's Warren Beatty. And I'm like, oh my God, your cadence is unbelievable. Like
it is.
Yeah. So he and because he really loved my dad, everybody loved my dad. That eliminated any sort of sense of, and he seemed pleased to do it, and he was great and smart and lovely, and of course, to do what, there are only two people who've been nominated for producing, acting, writing, and directing the same movie, got nominated for all four things in the same year, and those two people are Orson Welles for Citizen Kane and Warren Beatty twice.
Yeah.
For both Reds and for Heaven Can Wait.
Yeah, Reds is. I watched that night. That was a really.
I watched it to prep for.
Oh.
And it was. I mean, I'd seen it before, but again, that's a perfect example. I could never have possibly talked about Reds in any meaningful way without seeing it.
That was a movie that when it came out, I think I probably went to see it in the theater maybe like 3 times. I was kind of obsessed with it because it was like that idea of living in Greenwich Village and being with a communist. No, like
communists who look like Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
No, and he was
Jack Nicholson. I mean, come on, the cast is insane.
Yeah, and they're
of
all
Reds,
and they're so good, and he's so good in it, and she's phenomenal. And that moment of at the end when they, so I said to him, I'm like the greatest. Did they put that in?
Yes.
Put that in there? Good.
Yes.
Because we got to make a list of the greatest movie hugs because that's one.
Yes.
There's no way it's not number one.
Yeah, that was a killer.
That's a great hug
with the soundtrack, the beautiful soundtrack.
And he said I think he said that was the first take, and they shot others, but that was the one.
He did you notice? I'm getting off track here, but Warren Beatty always likes to eat on camera. That's
Oh, is that his little business that he likes?
He's constantly eating. He eats a lot in Reds.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that Jack Nicholson likes to eat. And I wondered, they're friends. Do they both like to eat on camera? That's something I like about him. So I can't ask you who your favorite person you interviewed are, but do you have like a top three?
I do. I mean, Angie, unquestionably, Norman Lloyd. Probably Angie, Norman Lloyd, and Eva Marie Saint. But Ernest Borgnine also was really
incredible.
great. I did that a few times, and he was terrific. And Ernest Borgnine and Mickey Rooney, and I'm leaving somebody out, got the biggest responses from the crowd. And everybody gets all these people get standing ovations and they've earned them. But Ernie had this, like, man, that crowd wanted him to feel it. Like there's this sense, and that the size of the theater matters here too, and the closeness of the audience. But we came out in Portland, and after, I just remember also we did a morning show that morning, and then afterwards we were headed back to the hotel, and he's like, "Who wants pancakes?" And we found a place in Portland. We all went to get pancakes. He's just, they had a whole show planned, and he was supposed to be on the first segment, and they canceled the whole rest of the show. He stayed on the whole hour.
He's one of those people. I did a sitcom called The Single Guy, and
the Jonathan Silverman show that he was. He played the doorman.
Yeah, he played the doorman, and I was, in fact, George Siegel, who's a longtime friend. They were doing Just Shoot Me next door, and so I would see George at lunch, and I said, yeah, I'm on the show. I go, Ernest Borgnine plays the doorman. He's in the elevator, and George went, "Oh my God!" I go, "That's you got, one day you're winning an Academy Award for Marty. The next day you're on The Single Guy." "Yes, sir. I'll see you in a minute." So we'd have like 3 lines with him, but he would tell great stories.
He loved to tell stories. He was just, again, there was this visceral connection with the crowd. Mickey Rooney was super challenging, incredibly challenging to interview. But the crowd really ached for him. So I was intimidated. I left out in my intimidation list. I was definitely intimidated by Sophia Loren. How do you avoid
Well, that's something interesting, because is there potentially a language issue?
There's potentially a language issue. So my thing, like you said, me trying to sort of get them on my side by being attempting to be funny. Like, what if she, doesn't understand what's happening? Because I'm like this idiot American boy.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. But it went. She was, of course,
charming,
lovely, and and she, because we did. What the hell did we do?
In terms of films,
Naples. We did I never remember the title of these incredible movies. Anyway, but
it happened in Naples.
No. Nope. Come on, Divorce, Italian style.
Oh yes.
And
okay.
so we, she gets up there and she says, she said, "I do not know the word, but my son told me that this movie is and she looks at her hand and she's written it in Sharpie on her hand. She goes, "My son tells me that this is a dramedy, part drama, part comedy." She makes a face, and of course the crowd just eats it up. She's reading it. She's beautiful. She's got this white silk pantsuit on.
Yes.
She looked fantastic. As we were walking to the stage, I was like, Sophia Loren is 82 years old, and I am right now at this moment checking out her ass, and then she's got, and it's so elegant and beautiful, and then she's written huge dramedy right in the palm of her hand, so she wouldn't forget it.
The one who freaked me out the most from TCM Film Festival, it was one of the first years you had the festival, and I didn't talk to him just because I just wanted to say hello to him, but I have to say Tony Curtis.
No, I had a lot of fun with Tony Curtis. Yeah.
Was, and I saw you interview him and everything, but that was like, just to meet him was a thrill, because it was such a tie. That is like mainlining for me to Hollywood.
I interviewed Tony Curtis the first time at some event, some film festival or some showing of probably Some Like It Hot in Long Island, and it was maybe the first remote interview I'd done for TCM, like in 2004, 2005. I'd only been there. I started in 2003, and we had to ride from the city in a limo out to this place in Long Island, and we were together in that. But I was that was a low point. for me because he was great, but I didn't know what to say to him, and I was scared to ask him anything. And I thought, well, I'm over my head, and all the people who I read online and then who say that I shouldn't have this job, turns out they're right. They nailed it. And we got through the interview fine. I've always gotten through the interviews fine, but it took till like 2010 or 11, post first festival, second festival, 2012, before. So that's not even that long ago, like 4 years ago, before I figured out that I figured out a way to do these things, and I'm good at them. But it took 40 that were fine because you try and get out of the way. But I spent a lot of time trying to prove my own worth in an interview. Like I'd ask them a question, they'd answer something, and then I'd just say some facts, to tell the audience, like, look, I'm smart too.
Yeah.
And that's hard not to do. And I hear people do it on radio interviews all the time, trying to like show off a little. And whatever, you can do it a little. But when I stopped doing that, it was a huge like, hey, if you don't think I belong here, that's fine. I can't be bothered. But better is not for me to, that gets in the way of a conversation. Me telling you the Best Picture nominees for 1950 for no reason, just to show you that I know them, whereas as opposed to saying literally, really, why?
I know.
Then you answering something.
I do. I see when people do that, and it bothers me. But I'm surprised that you would actually. Oh my God, I would never read. I accidentally see things about myself. Why would you read them? Did you think they would be helpful?
I couldn't help it. I mean, I was drawn to them. I don't know what that psychologically, what that says about me. I mean, I wanted to torture myself. I was, looking to be outraged by negative things because I probably believed them. And so they validated that. So, and also this was the TCM forums. This was the way this was our only manner of communication. Now when people hate me, they just tweet me, so now it's really instant.
Well, that's something to talk about is the rabid fan base of the TCM fans. They're so intense, and
that's the other thing. You get to the point where you're like, hey, I'm sitting in a crowd, and there'll be 1,000 people or 700 people in that crowd, and I'll be like, there are 370 of these people who know more about something in classic movies more than me all the time. And it's okay. They just know it. They may not know everything, but they know John Ford films, or they know this one movie, right? Or they know Bringing Up Baby,
Right.
And so I got it. I'm an interviewer. I'm a broadcaster. I facilitate this. I'm good at it. People are comfortable talking to me. That matters. I've now a significant wealth of knowledge, but I can't. You guys that's great. You win. And so I'll use them. So that's why when I'm like, you should be like, if a star blanks out on their co-star, or they're talking about an old movie that I didn't prep for, and I won't remember who directed something. I won't remember that Howard Hawks directed Bringing Up Baby. In the moment, in the interview, it'll escape me. And if they might, because some of them are, they're older, and they might forget, and they'll be like, and the director, I can just say, help me out. Yeah. And 1,000 people will yell, Howard Hawks, idiot. That was a bad example because I wouldn't forget that one. But there are plenty that I would, and you can use those fans, and and just getting comfortable with what you know and what you don't know that was rewarding for me.
So what are some of the highlights of so far that you can talk about? The TCM Film Festival, because I want to make sure to plug that, which is coming up.
April 6th through 9th. We're still working on stuff, as you know. Still trying to line people up, including some people who we have discussed today.
Yes.
That we're working on, that I'm helping. So the theme, I think, is comedy this year.
Yes.
So there are going to be a lot of comedies, but that's the theme is misleading in that it's not like that's what all the movies are going to be.
Right.
You want to know what we're going to show. Look at the year. Look for what it's the 30th, 40th, even 35th. 45th anniversary of, so look for movies that end in a 7 and a 2.
Well, definitely some of Peter Bogdanovich's films.
Yeah, totally. Well, obviously, because Peter will be there, and
so I'm assuming, again, I don't know, but assuming potentially people that he worked with or films he did. And What's Up, Doc's one of my favorite.
Yeah,
love that film.
And again, it's 45 years since the last picture show. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that's going to be one of them.
Yes.
But I don't know, actually. I don't know but I mean, I would imagine. And then I said, I think it'd be great to get Peter to talk about these directors who he can really channel in a way that Peter Bogdanovich, one of the great storytellers in this business.
I was reading online, and that's what I'm going to ask him about, is he organized apparently the very first retrospective of Orson Welles in this country.
Is that right?
Yeah, when he was working at MoMA, which I was not aware of. So coming out of, he was a big admirer of the Cahiers du Cinema, and so kind of wanted to start the same thing here. And
the whole idea of those guys.
What would we have done?
Yeah, how did these guys, Truffaut and Bogdanovich, like, what kind of critics just be like, yeah, I like talking about movies. You know what? I'm going to make them, and I'm going to be brilliant, right? I mean, it's one thing to like be like, yeah, I'm a critic. I'm going to go make movies, and then you make, no offense, but you make like 3 Adam Sandler movies, right?
Yeah.
And some of Adam Sandler movies are okay. I'm not trying to be extra, but like but to make movies that matter and last. Like, I don't know. It's really, it seems crazy because I know a bunch of critics, and it doesn't seem like they're about to do that.
Do you have a favorite Bogdanovich film? I'm very partial. Of course, I know Last Picture Show is a classic, but I'm kind of partial to Paper Moon.
Oh, I love Paper Moon. That's a great call. I love Paper Moon. And Paper Moon, Paper Moon. What year was Paper Moon?
70 what?
3? Is that too early?
I don't know. I'm gonna say a window of. I'm going to say 75.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to take the under.
Okay,
yes. You know I'm a gambler.
Yes.
Let's go $5 on the under. 1973.
Oh, so good.
I might have seen Paper Moon. That's the kind of movie that might have been my first movie.
Yeah.
And obviously not understanding it, but that's a great call. And she's so good in it.
Yeah, and their relationship is really touching.
The relationship is super, super touching. And family relationships that matter get me. It took me a long time to see it, but I finally saw Manchester by the Sea this week.
Oh, God. Yeah. And,
obviously I cried. Everybody cries. And I don't know whether I loved it yet. I liked it a lot, and there were some really good moments in it. But when he's at the lawyer's office, that's the scene that got me, when it occurs to me, oh, my God, his brother did this to save him,
right?
Like, know he was going to die, and that was it. That was gone. I couldn't hold it back.
It was sad. I thought the movie said anything for me with family just automatically kills me. Anyone even talk about doing hugging. And speaking of sad things, this is going to be my last question. Why is the TCM Remembers so much better than the one they do on the Oscars?
We have really, really. We have like, I don't know, 60 people working at TCM, 57. That's it.
Lean, mean staff.
Yeah, and they're good, man, and they care. I'm pretty sure that.
First of all, as soon as you hear that, da 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 da,
yeah.
I go.
No, it's really, really, really good, and every year it's good. And
216, it was like I can't. When they tacked on Debbie Reynolds at the end, it was like. It was too much. Yeah. It was hard enough when they tacked down Zsa Zsa Gabor.
We and by the way, real quick, because tomorrow, what is today, the 26th? So tomorrow night, 27. I don't know when this is podcast, but Friday the 27th. If it's not already Friday the 27th, is our salute to Debbie Reynolds.
Okay.
And I just did last week 5 movies with Todd Fisher. One of which was The Catered Affair, which has long been my favorite Debbie Reynolds movie because I like it.
Fantastic.
I just like it better when people aren't dancing for no reason.
Yeah.
And Bette Davis and Ernest Borgnine together, and they're both so wonderful and small.
Really good.
Yeah, great.
That's a wonderful movie. Yeah, I love that one too of Debbie Reynolds, and of course Wedding Bell Blues, in which I co-starred.
Of course. Yeah, it's weird. We talk. I don't. It
probably
came up. Must have come up. Yeah.
No. It's always surreal that I could draw and be like, yeah. So when I was doing the picture with Robert Mitchum, it's like it's.
My wife gets mad at me when I refer to, and I always do it on a second reference, and it's the only guy I do it. I will never say Bob De Niro or anything like that, but I frequently say Bob Mitchum. Like, just on this like second reference, especially like when we're talking about anything where it's like and he'll give you his best Bob Mitchum stare. But Leah's like, you can't do that. My wife is like, you can't call him Bob Mitchum. You didn't know him. You cannot call him Bob Mitchum.
I would have loved to have interviewed. I got to talk to him a little bit on the set, and there, but after being told numerous times, but I'm like, don't talk to Rob. Don't ask him about movies. That would always be like lectured.
And you can't not ask him about movies. You
I was
couldn't.
like, what was I, But the problem was,
How about the Dodgers?
Is that I had it was this scene. I had my hospital gown on. I was all beaten up. I was like, this is perfect. So we had all these people on the set that were visiting, Sean Penn and people, and they were there hanging out with Robert Mitchum. When I came out, I was literally attached to my IV because they were, that's how we were doing the scene.
Right, that scene. Yeah.
I came out with my IV to talk to Robert Mitchum, and he had the cigarette, and he looked up and he goes, "You need a new boyfriend." I was like, and scene.
Yeah,
that was
enough.
like,
Good enough.
Anyway, Ben, I adore you.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
Thanks for being patient.
And am I still an honorary?
Of course, an honorary Mankiewicz.
We didn't even get to your brother Josh.
Dateline NBC.
Oh.
My favorite Josh Mankiewicz story is we were talking, and I'm obsessed with Dateline, as is Tamara.
Yes, completely obsessed.
We love Dateline. And he was interviewing a murderer in Albuquerque, and I said, "My God, aren't you scared when you interview these people?" And he goes, "They're in shackles."
They're in shackles. Yeah. Let me tell you the thing about
That's good. That's a good one.
Everybody makes fun of I don't even think it sounds like him, but everyone who knows him.
Yeah. Let me tell you the thing about. Let me tell you the thing about these guys. They're behind bars.
But sometimes when I used to voice pieces when I was a reporter, I'd hear I'd catch it and I'd say, and we got to go, but I'd say, but police tell a very different story. And I would be like, oh, crap, wow, he really is my brother.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do so. All right. Ben, we have to get Peter on here. Thank you so much.
You can reach Ben on Twitter.
Yes.
Because he would love that. Ben Mank77. You can buy Illeana's book now out in paperback
That's
on
right.
Amazon.com and at bookstores. Our website is illeanaspodcast.com. You can find all kinds of stuff there. And we have a Facebook page. You should probably like that.
Please do. Everyone's life is a movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is our end. The end. Thank you, Ben. I adore you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.